Perfect. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, why do I keep getting hurt by the same people? In the same way? Perfect. Over and over again. That question stings because deep down you know the answer. You feel too much, give too much, and trust too quickly. Perfect. In thinking that emotions alone are enough to guide your life. But the truth is, your emotions are not always right. In fact, perfect. They can be the very thing pulling you into situations you should have walked away from long ago. You've been told that being emotional makes you human. Perfect. That feeling deeply is a strength. And yes, it is. Until those emotions start leading you instead of serving you. When you find yourself justifying pain, perfect, over-explaining your worth, or staying silent just to keep the peace, that's not strength. That's emotional captivity. You're not making conscious choices, perfect. You're reacting, surviving, folding yourself to fit into spaces that keep wounding you. And then you wonder why your confidence disappears, why your voice shakes, perfect. Why you feel drained even after doing the right thing. You keep thinking they'll see your heart if you just care enough. That if you love hard enough, perfect. Stay long enough, gripe enough, they'll finally value you. But all you're doing is burning your soul to keep people warm who never planned to light your fire. Perfect. You confuse emotional intensity with connection. You mistake chores for passion. You let guilt decide your actions, and fear of being alone decide your boundaries. Perfect. And in the end, you're the one left shattered. Again. But here's what they never taught you: emotions are not facts. Perfect. They are fleeting chemical reactions that can either inform you or imprison you. When you let them decide who you are, how you act, and what you tolerate, perfect, you surrender your power. You start living from a place of reaction, not reflection. You start begging instead of choosing, chasing instead of attracting, perfect, surviving instead of thriving. And maybe you're tired of always being the one who bends, breaks, and bleeds, perfect. Maybe you've reached a point where you no longer want to be the emotional fool. Maybe it's time to become the emotional master, perfect. Because when you learn how to feel without falling apart, when you finally understand that peace is a choice, not a reward, that's when you start winning, perfect. That's when clarity returns. That's when you look in the mirror and recognize someone you respect. So if you're still watching, perfect, it means something inside you is ready to change. You're not here for comfort. You're here for power. You're not here to stay the same. You're here to evolve, perfect. And this isn't just about controlling your emotions. It's about reclaiming your life. Every word you hear from this point on is a mirror, a challenge, perfect, and an invitation. Because the life you want will never belong to someone who lets emotions run wild. It belongs to the one who learns to rise above them, perfect. Every time you let emotions lead without thinking, you pay a price. Not just in moments of pain or regret, but in your identity, your direction, your peace, perfect. You lose pieces of yourself when you keep saying yes out of guilt, when you keep staying out of fear, when you keep trying to fix what only drains you, perfect. You trade your strength for approval, your clarity for confusion, your power for silence. And somewhere along the way, perfect, you forget what it feels like to live from your core, not from your wounds. People don't see what you're losing, perfect. They don't see the nights you spend overthinking, the self-blame that grows louder, the way your inner voice starts to whisper that maybe you're the problem, perfect. But deep down, you know what's happening. You've been handing out emotional access to people who haven't earned your trust, perfect. You've been giving your energy to situations that leave you empty. You've been mistaking being nice for being wise, perfect. And it's costing you more than anyone knows. You think loyalty means holding on, but sometimes loyalty means letting go. You think love means sacrificing yourself, perfect. But real love honors your sanity. And while emotions are valid, they are not always valuable. When you don't filter what you feel through wisdom, perfect. You let feelings shape your identity. You let guilt dictate your actions. You let fear of loss make decisions that should have been rooted in self-respect. Perfect. And that's the moment life starts controlling you instead of you controlling life. Let that sink in. When you move based on unfiltered emotion, perfect, you become easy to manipulate, easy to guilt, easy to use. You overextend for people who never show up for you. Perfect. You explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You hold on to relationships where you are tolerated, not celebrated. Perfect. And all of it comes from the same source, the belief that emotions are truth. But emotions are temporary. They're influenced by hormones, memories, and fear. Perfect. They pass. What stays is the damage they leave when you treat them like truth. You are not weak for feeling. Perfect. But you become weak when you let those feelings override logic, clarity, and self-respect. Perfect. Emotional strength is not about numbing yourself. It's about noticing what you feel without letting it dictate your path. It's about being able to say, perfect. I feel this, but I won't let it control me. That's power. That's freedom. Perfect. This is the moment you stop sacrificing yourself for temporary emotional comfort. Perfect. This is the moment you stop choosing peace with others while making war with yourself. Because no relationship, no situation, perfect. No moment of emotion is worth the long-term cost of betraying yourself. You've tried the path of emotional reaction. You know where it leads. Perfect. Now it's time to choose the higher road, a road where your mind leads, your values guide, and your emotions follow. Not the other way around. Perfect. The person you are becoming demands it. The life you deserve depends on it. You were never meant to be controlled by what you feel. You are meant to rise above it. Perfect. To hold your power, even everything when you want to break. Emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about guiding them, owning them. Perfect. And using them as tools, not chains. It's looking at cows and still choosing clarity. It's feeling anger and still choosing restraint. Perfect. It's facing rejection and still choosing worth. When you learn to lead your emotions instead of being led by them, everything changes. Perfect. Your decisions become sharper, your relationships become cleaner, your path becomes clearer. You don't have to act on every feeling. Perfect. You don't have to explain every reaction. You don't have to prove your pain for it to be real. Strength doesn't scream. It listens. It watches. It waits. Perfect. And when you start to master your inner world, the outer world can no longer shake you. That's where your confidence is born. Not from being loud, perfect, but from being unshaken. Emotional control doesn't mean coldness. It means clarity. It means walking into a room and not needing attention to feel seen. Perfect. It means walking away from conflict and still feeling strong. It means hearing the lies and still knowing your truth. You owe it to yourself to learn this. Perfect. Because if you don't, the same patterns will repeat. The same people will drain you. The same regrets will revisit you. And every time you break down, perfect, another piece of your potential slips away. Your life is too important to be lived in reaction mode. You are not here to constantly explain yourself, perfect, defend your emotions or sacrifice your peace to be understood. You are here to grow, to lead, to rise. And that requires discipline, not drama. Perfect. It requires stillness in the storm, not panic and discomfort. Perfect. You are allowed to feel everything. But you are also responsible for how you handle it. That's the line that separates those who evolve from those who remain stuck. Perfect. Feelings will come. Waves of emotion, disappointment, fear, frustration, they're part of life. But they do not have to own you. You are not your sadness. Perfect. You are not your anger. You are not your heartbreak. You are the one who observes, responds, and chooses. Perfect. And the more you practice choosing from your values instead of your wounds, the more powerful you become. This is where real growth begins. Not by chasing peace, perfect, but by creating it within. Not by being perfect, but being present. Not by controlling everything around you. By mastering everything within you. Perfect. You've lived long enough in emotional survival. Now it's time to live in emotional leadership. Let your wisdom speak louder than your wounds. Perfect. Let your values override your impulses. Let your peace become louder than your pain. And remember, emotional strength isn't the absence of feeling perfect. It's the presence of wisdom in the face of it. That's who you're becoming. And that's a version of you no one can break. You won't rise by accident, perfect. You won't become strong by chance. You build emotional power the same way you build physical strength. Through repetition, through resistance, perfect. Through conscious effort. If you wait until chaos hits to develop control, you'll always be too late. The work happens now, perfect. It happens in the quiet moments when you choose not to respond out of impulse. When you feel triggered and pause instead of exploding. When you want to collapse, perfect, but decide to breathe. These moments, small as they seem, are not weakness. They are the seeds of your transformation. Every pause is power, perfect. Every breath is a decision. Every step back from emotional chaos is a step forward into your mastery. You train your mind the same way you train your body, perfect. Not with pressure, but consistency. Not with force, but with focus. You begin by observing, not judging, perfect. You start hearing the thoughts you've been repeating for years. I'm too much, I'm too sensitive, I'm always the problem. And you challenge them, perfect. You replace guilt with boundaries. You replace fear with presence. You replace people pleasing with truth. You don't wait for others to give you peace, perfect. You create it within yourself, even when the world refuses to cooperate. That's emotional resilience. That's what sets you free, perfect. You don't need to be emotionless to be strong. You need to be emotionally fluent. You need to know what's real and what's just a reaction. Perfect. You need to know when to speak and when to be silent. You need to stop bleeding for people who only notice you when you're in pieces. Perfect. You are not made to be anyone's emotional sponge. You are not a dumping ground for guilt, blame, or expectation. You have the right to protect your energy. Perfect. You have the right to choose how you respond. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. There will always be moments that test you. People will say things that sting, perfect. Situations will trigger old wounds. But the person you're becoming no longer reacts like before. You don't collapse when ignored. You don't chase when rejected, perfect. You don't spiral when misunderstood. You breathe. You center. You remember who you are. You let the storm pass without letting it pull you under. Because now, perfect. Your strength isn't loud. It's rooted. It's not about controlling others. It's about controlling your response. This is how you build your inner armor. Perfect. Not by shutting down, but by standing up. Not by becoming hard, but by becoming whole. When you live from your center, perfect. You stop begging for peace because you've built it within. You stop defending your worth because you know it can't be debated. Perfect. You stop reacting to every emotional wave because you've learned how to stand still. This is not weakness. This is evolution. Perfect? And the more you choose growth over reaction, boundaries over guilt, wisdom over impulse, the more unstoppable you become. You don't just survive. You lead. Perfect. You don't just feel, you rise. You don't just react, you reign. This is the moment you stop apologizing for evolving. Perfect. You stop explaining why you're no longer tolerating what once drained you. You stop feeling guilty for choosing clarity over chaos, calm over confusion. Perfect? Growth over comfort. You are not the same person who used to break at every harsh word, who used to chase every emotional high. Perfect? Who used to hold on just to avoid being alone. You've outgrown that. And if your mind tries to pull you back, perfect. Remind it of the price you've paid every time you let your emotions run your life. Your emotions were never supposed to lead. They were meant to guide, not govern. Perfect. But now you know the difference. Now you recognize the subtle pull of guilt dressed as loyalty, fear disguised as love, anxiety pretending to be intuition. Perfect. And when you feel that pull, you no longer follow it blindly. You observe it. You name it. And then you choose the response that protects your peace. Perfect. Not your pattern. That is the strength of a person who has done the work. That is the mark of someone who's no longer available for emotional self-sabotage. Perfect. There's no need to react to every feeling. Not every mood deserves your attention. Not every thought deserves your trust. You are allowed to pause. Perfect. You are allowed to wait. You are allowed to hold space for your own truth instead of bending to everyone else's expectations. Perfect. You are allowed to choose yourself without guilt. And when you do, something powerful happens. Your energy begins to shift, the chaos quiets, the noise fades. Perfect. And in that stillness, you begin to hear your real voice again. Not the voice shaped by fear or desperation or wounds, but the voice of power, of wisdom, perfect, of alignment. You were never weak for feeling deeply. You became weak when you stopped choosing consciously. When you let emotion overpower your boundaries. Perfect. When you let fear replace discernment. But you've learned now. You've felt the pain of being too available. Perfect. You've lived through the heaviness of carrying everyone else's weight. And now you choose different. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. Perfect. You care enough to protect your energy. You care enough to lead yourself first. You've been conditioned to believe that emotional control is coldness. Perfect. But the truth is, it's compassion for yourself. It's choosing your peace without apology. It's knowing that how you feel is valid, but not always valuable. Perfect. It's knowing that growth means letting go of reactions that once felt like survival. It's refusing to be pulled back into cycles that no longer serve your future. Perfect. You no longer fold to avoid discomfort. You no longer betray yourself to keep the peace. You no longer confuse pain with love or guilt with duty. You stand perfect. You breathe, you choose. And with every choice, you redefine what it means to live with strength. This is emotional leadership. This is the end of the emotional fool. Perfect. This is the beginning of the unshakable you. You are no longer the person who needs chaos to feel connection. Perfect. You are no longer the one who confuses emotional highs with love or silence with peace. You've walked through the pain of self-abandonment. Perfect. You've lived the cost of being emotionally available to those who were never ready for your depth. And now, you stand at the edge of transformation. Perfect. No longer reacting but responding. No longer hoping to be chosen, but choosing yourself with intention, with clarity, with strength. Perfect. You finally see what was always true. You don't need to be less emotional. You need to be more emotionally disciplined. Perfect. It's time to stop performing for approval. Stop shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. Stop dimming your instincts just to avoid rejection. Perfect. Because your worth was never up for debate, and your peace is not a bargaining chip. You don't owe anyone your breakdowns. Perfect. You don't owe anyone access to your unhealed places, and you certainly don't owe anyone the right to dictate who you become. Let them misunderstand. Perfect. Let them judge. Let them walk away if your strength threatens their comfort. You weren't made to fit. You were made to rise. Perfect. The version of you that keeps over-explaining, over-apologizing, and overcompensating, that version has expired. That's the version built on survival, on fear. Perfect. On emotional dependency. And you've outgrown it? Growth means walking away without closure. It means choosing boundaries over explanations. Perfect. It means honoring your energy more than your need to be liked. Because real self-love isn't loud. It's quiet. Perfect. It's the choice to protect your peace when no one else will. It's waking up and deciding that your emotions serve you, not the other way around. Perfect. You've spent enough of your life reacting to pain. Now you learn how to respond with power. Perfect. You've spent enough time begging for clarity from people who benefit from your confusion. Now you become your own clarity. The shift is internal. Perfect. It's not in your job, your stats, or your relationships. It's in the way you show up for yourself when it's hard. Perfect. It's in the way you keep your standards when others test them. It's in the way you breathe through the storm instead of becoming it. Perfect. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be whole. You're here to be grounded, focused, and emotionally unshakable. That doesn't mean you never cry. Perfect. It means you don't collapse. It doesn't mean you never feel. It means your feelings don't control your decisions. Perfect. That's the difference between living in reaction and living in leadership. One drains you, the other elevates you. This is your identity shift, perfect? E, from emotional cost to calm certainty. From chasing validation to owning your worth. From emotional collapse to emotional command. You are not an emotional fool, perfect. Not anymore. You are a for decision, you are a boundary that doesn't break. And from this moment on, perfect. Your emotions don't lead your life, your wisdom does.